nobody's right completely and nobody's
Right.
wrong completely. This is why I think we cannot get legalization, because it is an art form. I think you just have to do a lot of work. A friend of mine used to say the difference between a great artist and a mediocre artist is they just do a lot of work.
Astrology Hub's biggest event of the season is starting tomorrow. I'm Sam Reynolds, one of the 12 panelists speaking at the game-changing transit event. You'll learn all about the pivotal astrological moments in life and in the world we share. I'm really looking forward to talking about Saturn in Pisces, so I hope to see you there. Get the details at astrologyhub.com/game-changing.
Have you ever wondered how to tell the difference between a fake guru and a master astrologer? I'm sure most people have been in that situation at some point. And so the goal of this episode is to help you with identifying a true master of the craft, if that is even possible. And today I'm actually subbing for Amanda. You probably used to seeing Amanda, but now it's a different face. And for those who don't know me, I am Joe G. I'm an astrological magician and podcast producer for Astrology Hub. And I'm here with our guest and Astrology Hub favorite, business astrologer, Georgia Stathis, who is also an upcoming Inner Circle guide. We're both Inner Circle guides, actually, for 2023. And if you enjoy this episode, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to support the show, because it really does help. So let's get started. Hi, Georgia.
Hi, Joe. Hi, everybody.
Yeah, so I wanted to start really kind of like painting a picture of how the astrology field is today. Like, what's the importance of actually having like a lot of years of experience in the astrology field, and how does it even work as far as like regulation and things like that go? Because with a doctor, you can go very easily and check all of their credentials. With an astrologer, it's a little bit different. So how does it work?
Well, maybe that's going to our number 2 question. What about certification? That sort of thing. I mean, that's a real basic thing. I have to say, I've been doing this a long time, and I've been through a lot of these phases where our community tried to be certified. And actually, the good news now is our community, because the government does not want to cooperate so much with us in many ways. And there's probably a reason for that. We'll explore that, I think, further in the conversation. But what is good is in the last maybe 20 years, and I've been doing this for about almost 50 years, that the organizations have taken on the role, many of the international organizations, not just American organizations, have taken on the role of certifying if somebody wants to be certified as an astrologer. An example is NCGR, which is an international organization. They have a program a person can go through. CAP, which is through ESAR, they have several affiliate schools around the globe right now. And they're all over. They're in Chile, they're in Mexico, they're in Germany, I'm teaching for 2 schools in China that are certified. And so that's how we've been able to do it. The thing is, we had a grand experiment around 2000 where Kepler College in Washington hired a bunch of us who had our masters and doctorates and, who were astrologers, have been doing it a long time, for undergraduate programs. And we tried desperately with the state of Washington. We were authorized, which is different than getting accreditation in a university, standard government university setting. When you're authorized, you can do it and you can give your students a degree and we had a master's program too. But we tried 3, 4, 5, 6 years to get accredited, because accreditation is what gives a school or a university the ability to get government funding.
Right.
And it was impossible, as hard as we worked to put that together. So I think what's happened since that time, and I think it's probably around that time, right around the time that 2000, 2001, that a lot of the organizations began to say, well, screw this. We're going to certify our own people. And that's happening all over the world right now. And you can just go online. I mean, I have several resources here. Astrology is still teaching, but it's doing vocational. I mean, now Astrology Hub is another, this platform is a great way for people to be exposed, but it has been very, very difficult. And if I can add just one more thing to that, in 1983, AFAN, American Federation of Astrology's network, decided to take on a media watch program because, and this may segue us into master astrologer versus a fake astrologer or fake, right? Is that we were having a lot of problems in a lot of cities around the United States where astrologers were being arrested and their books were being taken. Yeah, because it was considered to be in the same category as fortune tellers. And the fortune teller is the one you go see, $5 or $10, but give me another $50 or $100 and I can make your life work, right? But that wasn't us. So what AFAN did, and J.H. Jacobs, who was one of my compatriots, he died way too young. He started a legal assistance program for astrologers that were actually arrested.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And we actually went, many of us went to our cities and spoke to our boards, city boards, councils to say, look, there's a big difference. And it was a big risk because we were putting ourselves out there that we're astrologers too. So it's pretty easy now to get certification. It was pretty hard in those days, and so then you have the issue of huge amounts of choices now because now we have the internet.
Right.
And that's where your question comes in for today, right? Okay, what's real and what's Memorex and what's not, what's real, what's not real.
And I think that's actually a good point to illustrate the whole history of everything, because maybe some of the people that have not been exposed to the world of astrology at all kind of expect people can actually go to school for it. And sometimes you can get people who do, but they're in astrology adjacent sort of territory sometimes. I see a lot of astrologers who have theology degrees or literature degrees and things like that. And do you think that looking for these things in an astrologer can be a good sign that they're really qualified for people looking for astrologers?
I do think, and I think in order to be a really good astrologer, and by the way, you don't have to, have degrees in any of this stuff really to be a good astrologer. But I think you have to have a hybrid education. I think you have to not only study astrology, but you've got people coming to you and they want to know about what's going on with their life. And if you're just an astrologer who hasn't been in the world and hasn't done any work or has just been an astrologer, I'm not saying you can't do that. It's not really fair to your clients because you need to have a little world experience under your belt. And I think we're a very creative group, really. This is another reason I think it's not become legal because there's so many facets of astrology. It's the least boring job I've ever had. I'm sure it's the least boring job you've ever had, right? I mean, because we probably had a lot of jobs before. And this fits all the little holes, and pockets. It's perfect, right? But you have to be creative. And so getting a theology degree, a religion, a philosophy, business. I have an MBA degree. So my specialty is business. And I've always been interested in business. And I think if you want to be, I think this is the age of specialization also for a lot of astrology, right? And so if you want to be a specialist in something, maybe you have a great medical background, but you don't want to be a nurse or a doctor anymore, or an assistant. This would be a perfect place for somebody who wants to study astrology and integrate and hybridize, if there's such a word, their industry and see the connections in astrology.
100%.
And that really,
I love that you mentioned that.
That's how I started. I was doing astrology for a long time, but I was always interested in business and I always saw these patterns, So, I wonder about that. And you have to be curious. That's the other thing about astrology. I think to be a really good astrologer, I don't want to say master because it sounds sort of hoity-toity.
Right.
But to be a really good astrologer, curiosity is a key thing here. A good Mercury that wants to ask questions. And frankly, not just study one vein of astrology. And I think this is very important to becoming a master or somebody who really knows what they're doing, is because for those of us who are somewhat seasoned, that's the new word for seniors, seasoned, we study different house systems. We study different ways of doing astrology. We study different classical versus medieval, or we study Vedic and tropical. Maybe you didn't get all of that stuff in one of those disciplines, but there's always a kernel you take into your practice.
Right.
And, and I would experiment, especially if you're just coming up. I would experiment with different things, but don't get too stuck. This is my view. I could be wrong. I don't want to put anybody off that's listening to this because I am not an authority whatsoever. And I have no idea sometimes of what I'm talking about. But what I do know, because I've been doing this a long time, is you have to be flexible in your learning patterns. You really do. Know what's going on in the world. Maybe don't go get a job in the world, but know what's going on in the world because, and if you're going to do a psychological astrology, which is very modern, it's a very 20th century thing, maybe study some courses in counseling or read books on counseling. And I think what's important also, if you're going to go that route, and I think this only really comes with experience. I don't think we get it coming right out of the gate, is to know when a client of yours really needs therapy.
Right.
As opposed to doesn't get it, and keeps coming back. And this is a little off topic a little bit, but this is part of learning to be a master astrologer is, if somebody keeps coming back to you and back to you and back to you, and they keep going through relationships and it's never working and it's always everybody else's fault. This is a good example. You have to have the chutzpah to tell them, which means you might lose that client. Look, I'd love to help you, but I don't think I can go any further with this. And that's something, I think that's a real good tell about somebody who's pretty good at what they do,
Right. And for like a person who like is a student of astrology and they're potentially looking for different teachers, like there was something that you said earlier that I kind of want to bring back because you talked about how like degrees are nice. It's good to have a degree, but that sometimes doesn't make the best astrologer. Yeah. What are other things that people might look for other than like degrees and like accreditation and all sorts of things like that?
Well, honestly, I think if you've been in an industry for a long time and you're really good at that industry, doesn't mean you have to have a degree in that industry. And this is where the innovation part comes into our practices. That industry crossed over to using astrological technique that can give you lifetime clients right there. I did have experience when I used to sell a lot of real estate, not a lot, but I sold real estate in my 20s before my MBA. And how I got into my practice was people would find out I was doing astrology, but I knew land and real estate and I knew business. That's where all my clients came from. I didn't look for them, but because I was in the industry and I could translate. That's what this whole thing is about. Translate what you know really well into your astrological practice. That's a master.
And I think that might be a really good like tip for a student. Like if they already know something that they're already good at doing, because that's kind of how my transition from like artist to astrologer kind of happened. Because I went to school for painting and drawing, and then I did some sound design and things like that. And then now I'm doing like astrological magic, which involves a lot of art making. And a lot of my clients are also other artists. And if I'm doing elections, I'm like helping them like release their new song or release their like make an announcement for like a new painting that they're selling or something like that. So I think that for the student who's like super eager but don't know where to start, like maybe you're already just look at what you're doing and what you like doing and just bring astrology into that,
You already have a cosmic degree.
Right?
I'd like to call that a cosmic degree because, even if we never become astrologers, we come into this life, I think, with the ability to do something. And if we're fortunate enough to find that in our lifetime, and after a while, we don't want to do that anymore, but we know it really well, you've got a degree. You don't have to. I wouldn't ask somebody, do you have any degrees in astrology or degrees in masters? Or that's not how you find a good astrologer. I think, we kind of are attracted to the people that we have a common language with in something else, not astrology.
Right.
And I think that's a key thing if you're coming up as a new person, So another comment here is if you're starting out, and I need to say this, sometimes you're really good at what you do as an astrologer. You know your stuff, right? But the issue is I'm not good enough to see clients. I had a wonderful, she was great. She's gone now. She was a student of mine for years. She was a student when I was coming up, much older than me. She'd been doing astrology 20, 30 years. She was a really good astrologer. She transcribed my work. She never wanted to start a practice because she didn't think she was good enough. And I think I don't think you just hang a shingle up right away. I think you have to put your toe in the water and just start doing charts for people without maybe even charging them. That's how I started.
You learned so much doing that. Yeah.
You go take me to lunch and I'll look at your chart. That's how I did it. If you want, I'm studying a little astrology. I'll look at your chart. We'll go to lunch. We'll do it. I don't do that anymore, of course, but that's how I started. Another way is if you're involved in your community, like your life community, the people, whether the community of peers or the city in which you live. Okay. Well, another idea because really it's good to get on person experience. I used to have, it's a fun idea too. If you know a group of people that are interested in having their charts done, kind of like this is way back in the 50s when my mom was still around, the Tupperware party. So, you get somebody who's a host, right? You get somebody who's a host, bring 10 people into the evening, and everybody has to give me the data beforehand. And then everybody has to agree that I'll do only 10 minutes on their chart in front of the group, and they have to agree to that. And then if they like that, then come for a private session.
Actually, it's funny you mentioned that because I actually did do that because I had, when I was living in Toronto, I was living in a house full of actors and they had parties all the time and they always needed like an attraction. So they always will want like either a tarot reader or like an astrologer. And at that point, I was doing both tarot and astrology. So I just got a whole bunch of experience in one night and I got to party with everybody, which was also awesome. And just like recharge like that. Sometimes you really don't have to overthink it. It's really just putting yourself out there that gets it done.
I think, Joe, what you just said is the key to growing your practice and growing yourself as an astrologer. Do not overthink it. Ever. You have the information. That's Uranian, right? Your job is to wake people up. I mean, I think Uranus, it wakes us up, right? And there's two things here. Don't overthink it and don't be afraid to say what you do.
Yeah.
If you're gonna do this professionally, because maybe you won't. People listening to this may not do it, but if you want to do this professionally, it's important to be brave enough to tell people what you do and be willing to take the hit when they say, "Well, I don't believe in that stuff," and not get into arguments with people. Because a lot of people, when they're just starting out, when they hear about this, if they've never heard about it, think it's bad work. It's the devil's work, right? And, I don't believe in that stuff. Or God doesn't like that. Well, Jade Jacobs, who started AFAN, his father was Moby Dick, and he wrote a great book. He was a minister in the Methodist Church, and he wrote a book called Astrology's Pew in Church, which is one of the most remarkable little books. I have an old copy of it. He went through the Bible. And he actually talked about, David, that Star of David was really on David's shield. It was his double trine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And these are the kinds of things, if you're moving into the community, I think as professionals, we want to work with I call them the straight people, right? Non-astrologers, right? But we do work with our peers as well. But when you're working with the straight people in the world, the non-astrologers, you got to have some real knowledge of this. If they're going to say, well, and if they don't want to do it, of course, you're not going to push it. But, and I think the other thing is, if you want to grow your profession, be very clear that you want to be paid for your work. Not when you're first starting out, you're having lunch with people and you're having parties, and you're learning and you're building your practice, but be very clear about scheduling and how much you charge for your time and how important it is for them to keep the appointment and to keep records. If you can't keep records, because lots of times a lot of astrologers are very artistic, but the right and the left brain thinkers are very different, right? So, so either have somebody, now we have software that does that. Right now it's easy. PayPal. We didn't have that in the old days, but be clear that maybe you can read my chart. Oh, I would love to. My fees are, and I see people Mondays through Fridays from 9 to 5.
Right.
And when half the people will say, oh, okay, well, let me make an appointment. And half the people will say, oh, they didn't take it seriously, right? So this is part of becoming a master. You need to learn a little bit about your business, about business. I think one of the things I experienced doing this is I used to charge $25 for 5 hours worth of work. That was a lot. And then 2 hours with the client. And then my husband at the time, he was in business. He said, you've been in there like 6 hours. You're charging $25. And one of the things I found over the years as I got more experience and I raised my fees a little bit, I got clients that took me seriously, who showed up when they were supposed to show up and who took it seriously. And also the good thing here is sent you referrals, because that's a key thing. You want to have referrals that are really good referrals to build your business, because if we're going back to the same topic, you work with artists. Okay. I work with more business type people or people who are self-employed. They're going to have friends that are self-employed or artists, right?
Yeah.
And they're going to send them to you, right? And that's going to become your work, that your line of work. That's going to become your line of work. Even though you may not want to be that, they'll make you become whatever they want you to become, because you're good at whatever you're doing. And I think that is the best way to build a practice.
That does such a good job at painting the picture of what a really good astrologer looks like. Not just about degrees or anything like that, but if you are a student of astrology and you're looking for a teacher or a mentor, you want to find all of these things in their website. You want to see that they're charging what they're worth. You want to see that they have a very organized schedule. You want to see that they have those years of experience, and maybe they even have a specialty. If you are a student of astrology and already know what kind of line you kind of want to go into, going for an astrologer that is already doing that, probably the best idea,
Yeah. I think you just said something very, very important, because good astrologers have specific things that they're very good at, in terms of techniques. And I don't know, I've never done any research on this, but I think everybody's horoscope responds to specific techniques. I think we all respond to transits, but I think, maybe if you're born on an eclipse or within days of an eclipse, you're going to respond to eclipse readings. Catherine DeJersey, that's how I learned about eclipses. And this is why you want to go to people who teach techniques, and not just go to one of their classes, go to a lot of the classes that they teach on the same technique. It's like a muscle, right? You just keep working it, and you keep working it and keep working it and keep doing charts. And, a teacher of mine years ago said this, and I think this is so true. And maybe all this, I have it written in my office here. The purpose of a good astrologer is to validate the client's subjective experience. And I think that's true.
Now, what would be the opposite of that? How can you know an astrologer might not be the best astrologer for you to learn with?
If you are looking for somebody who's pretty good at this and you're not sure, say, I just need 10 minutes of your time, and really stick with 10 minutes. Don't give them your chart, but just talk to them and say, how long have you been doing this? Is there a specialty that you have? And if you're getting a lot of I'm very sensitive to this, blowhard energy or red flags coming up.
What would be some red flags? If let's say you're a student of astrology, you really are looking for that one mentor that will take your practice to the next level, and you're sitting with the astrologer trying to screen them, almost like an interview. You're interviewing a couple of astrologers because you don't know who you want to settle with. What would be some red flags that they could present in those conversations?
Well, I think it has a lot to do with the way we process information as individuals. Okay. And I see this in our industry a lot, because I do attend a lot of online classes just to see what everybody's doing. Right. And there are very different styles, I've noticed. There is the very right brain kind of getting spiritually grounded. That's very different than if
very poetic too.
Very
sometimes.
poetic, beautiful voices, but if you're a left brain thinker, Saturn versus Neptune, I don't know, Saturn versus Jupiter, and you need, you say to them, well, I need to have some very concrete dates about some plans coming up. And they say, well, first we should probably see if you're kind of grounded and that's probably not going to work for you, even though they're probably correct. Right.
Right.
Because you just want the meat. You don't want the potatoes, right? Now that's a left brain. That's okay. Well, and then you ask them, well, like some of the things you can look at. And then the person responding to you, the teacher says, well, I either teach these courses in this, this, and this, which helps you find this. Very concrete answers versus I want to develop my spiritual, esoteric, practice. Yeah. There's very different ways, and I think sometimes I think when you're more of a right brain thinker, more of an artistic thinker, you're really better off going to a logical left brain thinker. I don't think you should just stick with one teacher either. I think you should enhance the gifts you have, but also work with people who look at things from a very concrete, realistic perspective, because that's actually training your brain to go back and forth between the
both
right and
ways.
brain. Yeah. Which is what we do when we do readings for people, or sessions or whatever people call them now. That's what we do. We go back and forth. We are looking at symbols, which is a right brain experience, an archetypal experience. But in the world, what do those things mean? Okay.
Right.
And so, like somebody might come up to interview a teacher or an astrologer and say, I know, because they studied a little bit, I know that Neptune is on my moon now, and it's going to be there a while. Okay. And I've read all these terrible things, terrible things you read. You're dismembered, you're confused, you're an alcoholic, and so if somebody says to you, yeah, you are dismembered, confused, and an alcoholic, then I probably would say, don't go to that person.
Right.
But I would say.
So, and that's actually such a good point, because I think for students who are looking for teachers, to get a reading with that teacher first is probably such a good idea. And to just like step in the role of the client. So you're both learning how to be a client and how to approach your clients. And you get like a very well-rounded perspective. And you're really learning not just if that teacher is your style, but if what that teacher does is what you actually also want to do.
I think if you have a reading with who you want to teach you, and when you've been in a session with somebody, whether it's working or not, even though it could be good information, it's just not clicking, right? And if it's not clicking, that means that if it's not clicking, that means that the mode of communication between the two of you might be best served by you going to someone else where the click is there. Right. It doesn't mean that the astrologer or the teacher you've interviewed or worked with wasn't good. It's just the click. I call it the click. I don't know what that is. There's something, because you will notice, and this does happen a lot, that this is the other thing. This is how you learn your own life too. If you're doing client work, that you're getting clients that are often going through the same cycles you're going through.
Oh my God. The amount of Leos that I get is hilarious.
Right. And they have similar cycle. I mean, you're supposed to know, you're the astrologer, right? Or the teacher. Yeah. And they're going through the same stuff you're struggling with, which means as the astrologer, the teacher, you have to work extra hard at trying to figure out what that is, because when that client comes in and has Neptune on their moon and you've been going through it longer and you've had a few experiences, you can share some optimistic things that happened with it, and that will happen. You will get the same. It's weird. It's almost like it's like cosmic magnets,
There is some magic that happens there. I don't know what it is, but like it's even hard to answer the question, like how to find like the perfect teacher, because it kind of just finds you. Like if you just set the intention, like I am going to study astrology and this is what I'm going to do, like within a couple of months or sometimes even days. That is what happened to me actually. I first started studying with Chris Brennan, but then I went to my first astrology conference and I met Gemini Brett there, and then we just clicked.
Very different. Very different.
Yeah, very different.
But both good.
Both good. Yeah, like you will find the right teacher for you. I think when it comes down to it, it's more about, again, experimenting and having readings with people and like attending to different classes and really figuring out like what you want first. Because I think it's less about telling whether the astrologer is a master or not a master, but it's more about knowing what you want to learn and who is able to teach that sort of thing. Would you say that?
Absolutely would agree with you. And I think it's so important. And the great thing now with, Zoom and all these platforms is you can learn anywhere in the world. I mean, sometimes honestly, it's a little overwhelming because there's just too much going on. But, now, if you want to learn about solar arcs or, you're really learning about transits on something, you can find those classes and go experiment with this teacher, I do think a key thing is to know your astrology, though.
Like
Places
your own chart.
well, I don't know if we ever really know our own chart, but to know it enough, like Midwest School of Astrology, she teaches beginning, middle, and basics, and which is interesting. That's a hybrid school. It's live and it's online. And if you could find hybrid learning, in other words, we can learn a lot online, but if you could find some live classes in your community, I think I know it's really hard to do that now because everybody's got Zoom, right?
Yeah.
But if you could find some live classes of people who've been teaching for a while, there is a difference when you walk into a room with a whiteboard and, whatever they're using, PowerPoints or whatever, with people there where you can actually, there's a difference. It's more organic. It's more of an organic learning experience rather than which is much more in the head,
And even if you don't have like these astrology schools nearby, there's always conferences too, which kind of like present a similar experience. And you get to like go around and see a whole bunch of different astrologers from a whole bunch of different backgrounds. And you really get to kind of like at Costco, just get like tasters.
It's very good. The Cosmic Costco. I love it. Yeah, that was on my list of things. Live conferences. We used to do a lot more than we have the last few years, but that's where you really learn. And it's in not only the multiple choices you have from so many speakers and so many topics. If you're and this is another thing, if you're in a room and they're teaching something that's valid, but it's not clicking for you, so, if you don't know who this teacher is, I'm never offended. If somebody's in the back of the room or even in the front and they need to leave, don't take offense if you're teaching or if you're learning, because maybe maybe the person next door is the right teacher for you, because that's an intuitive move, right? The other thing in conferences, live conferences with human beings, it's the in-between moments. The sitting around having a cup of coffee or a glass of wine and talking with people or listening to a conversation, which I used to do a lot in the next table, or walking through the bookstore and seeing all the books that have been written by all the people that you don't even know about. And going, oh, this is a teacher teaching this technique. Maybe I should get a hold of this person and maybe learn from them. Live conferences, I hope we keep doing them because I think they're a major way to really learn your craft, I think. Live conferences.
And that's even part of how like Astrology Hub like selects astrologers for the inner circle. Like we go to the conferences and watch all of their lessons to really see like what is the best teaching style, and we can get like a very diverse cast of astrologers to kind of like bring that experience to the computer, because like you said, it's so hard to replicate it, but like it's very much necessary to have a little bit of that taster cosmic Costco experience.
And I think the other thing about this industry too, whether you're teaching or you're learning or you're professional, is nobody's right completely. And nobody's wrong completely. This is why I think we cannot get legalization, because it is an art form. With a basic structure that has gone into, millennia, different ways of doing it, different ways of approaching it. I mean, there's evolutionaries, there's psychological, there's classical, there's medieval, there's Vedic, there's mundane, there's medical. I mean, Hori. I mean, there's so many ways to do this, and you, the astrologer, or will be good at something, one or two of those things.
Yeah. It really is, again, about that, like just finding the right fit for you.
It is a game of finding the right fit. And it's also to become a master. I think you just have to do a lot of work. A friend of mine used to say the difference between a great artist and a mediocre artist is they just do a lot of work.
That is very true.
Because, if you think about it, in the classicals, before we saw Uranus and the outer planets, Saturn was the ruler of Aquarius. And that's about discipline, which we've just passed through. Saturn and Aquarius. We're about to leave, thank God.
Yeah.
So, I think, and if somebody's BSing you too.
Yeah.
In fact, I was having a conversation. This is very good. I was having a conversation with someone who was watching a program with, of all people, Ellen DeGeneres and I think Megan Fox or somebody. And I think Megan Fox, and I'm not disparaging Megan Fox, but she was talking about how she'd been studying astrology. And so so I guess DeGeneres, I'm not sure, was starting to ask her questions, and then she couldn't answer all of them. And she then admitted, well, I've just been studying it a little bit. Now that's a good example of, that's why you should know a little bit if you're going to go, know a little bit, but then you can ask a few questions. And if they're, you don't want to ask them, what's the high leg in my chart? That's going to be impossible, right? But, what are your thoughts about Saturn conjunct the moon?
Right.
That might be a good question. And they'll say, well, and give you a bullshit answer or whatever. And you'll know that's not the right person.
Would you say that like a good first step is for you to do a little bit of studying on your own? So
Absolutely.
you even can tell if a person is not entirely
Absolutely.
like knowledgeable,
I think you absolutely have to do that. And, of course, the challenge with that is that some people try to study it and they just can't do it,
Yeah.
But, because that some people just don't have that interest. But if you could know a little bit, it's actually what it would do is give you a value added session with the astrologer or the teacher. Because you're coming in prepared, with not with a lot, but a few pieces that you're aware of. And that's a value added experience then, where you then will go, oh, okay, maybe I should explore this more. But if you don't, and I think if somebody, as a astrologer, and somebody comes to you, most of my clients don't know astrology. Now they're better. But you had to learn to speak in English to them about what Neptune is, or what is Saturn. And the thing I found to be very successful with a client building a practice, people understand stories better than babble.
Yes.
If you tell them, well, Saturn's on your Uranus, and this means that this is going to happen in a first quarter square, and they're not going to get it. They're going to leave going, what was that about? But if you tell them, right? And I see a lot of people do that. Oh, Saturn's in your so-and-so, and that means this. Even in a lot of forecast work or a lot of newsletter work, I think we need to work as professionals, as well as teachers, as well as beginners, on our language. Because the language is what shows the real value of our beautiful art form, and to know the stories behind these characters called planets. I think that helps a lot, because they'll get that, but they won't get the babble. And
I think at the end of the day too, like the job of an astrologer is to be a translator. So if you're translating something into the same language that you're trying to translate, that's not translation. You're just reading it out,
Absolutely right. You are a translator. You are a communicator. You're supposed to translate a language, and if you're fortunate enough to have a really good Mercury, maybe it will be easier for you. Right. But just because you don't have a really, exalted Mercury or whatever, because it's impossible for everybody to have that, you have some skills. And those skills will equate to something in people's charts. Like you might be a real, what would be it? Well, like therapists or Pluto, right? That's Pluto, right? People want to go into. But say you're a person who is very, I don't know. I'm just trying to pick a point. Okay, Mars. See, you have a strong Mars energy in your own natal chart as a teacher or an astrologer. You might get people who want to. You might get people who want to engage their Mars, learn about their Mars, learn how to use it in a positive way, and learn how to diffuse it in a way that makes it a healthier Mars. You will. That's the other thing, and you're healing yourself, and you're helping to heal your clients at the same time. Yeah, because you will attract. I mean, I have a really great friend. She's 85, great astrologer up in Mendocino. Very strong Jupiter in a chart. We always make jokes when we talk about our clients because I have all this Saturn stuff. And all these years I've known her, she's great, therapist background. I love my clients. We come and we talk about the most wonderful things. And, and she really is good at what she does. She's very good at giving optimistic outcomes. She's Jupiter in the first house, right? I don't get those people. I get the Saturn people that are going through very hard problems. Okay. And that's maybe if an astrologer is willing to share their chart with you, if you know enough, and some are unwilling and you don't want to make them give it to you. But if I think if you've been here long enough, your chart's out there anyway. Let them have your damn chart. I mean, let them have it. What are they going to do to you? They're not going to change you, right?
I was going to say that actually might be a good exercise for us to do, go through all of the planets and maybe point people towards certain ways. Because we talked about Mars and how that, if you have a strong Mars in your chart, how being an astrologer might look for you, and how a teacher might look for you also. What about the other planets? We talked about Saturn also with you. Talked about Jupiter.
Well, there's 10 legal planets. I mean, we could also look at all the asteroids too, but we're not going to do that today. I mean,
right.
You could look at, strong moon people. Angular moons, lots of aspects to the moon, a lot of Cancer in the chart. There's a lot of ways to look at that. And training that moon, because of a strong moon person, not to be judgmental, but it can be very codependent. Or it can give too much and not set any limits. And that would be, to work with the moon, because when you're in a personal situation with a client and they're going through a heavy, especially family moon crisis, which a lot of them come to that, you got to have your moon strong, even though if it has, know your moon well, so you know how to help them in the best way possible. Or, if you have a strong Neptune energy or Pisces energy or whatever. And I remember this years ago, in a session it was 10, 15 years ago in my office, something came to me in a session that this person was going through this thing with someone else. And I said I learned about Neptune on that day. I said, look, if you keep doing what you're doing, you're both going to just have to come back and keep doing it. So why don't you let them take the hit, basically? So they can grow up, and so you can set a boundary.
Right.
That sounds cruel, but it's not cruel. It's working with Neptune. That's the hard thing of Neptune. Or what about Uranus? Somebody who's got a lot of Uranus in their chart. Now, somebody who's got a lot of Uranus in their chart could be a very good astrologer, okay, but they may not have the patience, okay, to sit for an hour or two and do all the work. They may not have the patience. Well, they like podcasts, right? They're the podcast person, 100%. Right? We're the 15-minute, this is today's thought. That's Uranian.
Yeah,
right?
The 15-minute Harveys are golden for me.
That's the Uranian thing, man. That is it. Because we all have, the Saturns are going to work for hours, The Jupiters will give you hope, right?
Right.
The Sun, where's the Sun rules Leo, right? Leo, the heart, love. Giving as well as learning how to receive. That's a big issue. Speculating, taking chances, gambling on things. How much of a gambler are you on an investment, on a love life, on and are you able not only to give a whole lot, but are you able to receive, which is a problem with Sun people? Great at giving, but not real good at receiving, and that's each one of these characters will tell you, and maybe as a Sun type of astrologer, you want to have fun with your client. Maybe you could do art. Maybe you could do art therapy and astrology with your client. Where they're painting stuff and they're going through a transit and you say, okay, let's try this. I don't think anybody's ever done that. I think that's a hell of an idea. But anyway, going on, Mercury is somebody who writes, somebody who could write or speak very succinctly. Venus. Okay. Strong Venus person would as an astrologer or as a teacher might be really good at the arts or in interiors or working with
Synastry,
value
maybe?
systems. Huh?
Synastry, maybe, would you say?
History, relationships, composites, Davison charts, strong Venus, because that's, and even if they have a challenged Venus, in a way, if you have a challenged Venus, that could be your work, really.
Right?
People don't understand that. If you have a Saturn square Venus, that doesn't mean you're never going to have love, and it doesn't mean you can't figure this out. It means you could be really good at this. You just have to work at it, or it'll become your work.
Right.
So, yeah, I think that could be fun. I don't know if a Mars type astrologer would have the patience. They might be able to work with somebody in terms of health issues, like exercise. I don't know.
Oh, right.
Exercise, working your muscles, and I think there could be a whole
Maybe
bunch of
coaches also.
Yeah.
I have a good friend of mine who is an astrologer, and she has Mars and Capricorn rising, and she is a
Very
coach. Like she very like, this is what you got to do. She does like business coaching actually. So that might be like a Marsy astrologer too, like very goal oriented. Like let's do this.
These are your tasks. These are your tasks. And these are the tools. That's Mars, tasks and tools. Okay. These are what you have to do. Fill this out, fill this out, fill this out. Then let's talk next time, which means they have to do the work. Right. Okay.
Right.
I've also found a lot of coaches, strong chirons.
Oh, right.
I have seen this over and over again, that they're coaching on something that they struggled with in their own life and they had to master, I mean, and maybe they've not really completely fixed it for themselves, but they can sure help everybody else, and I think that's why it might be a good idea to look at somebody's chart. See, are they Mars type or Saturn type or Uranus type? And there's a place for everybody. That's the beautiful thing about this.
Yeah. That's the beautiful thing about astrology. It truly never ends. Cool. I think we gave people a lot of tools to work with in finding like their next sort of mentor or teacher. Do you feel like there's anything else that we didn't cover?
Oh, yeah. One more thing is, I think to get really proficient at this work is before you start to everybody knows this, but I'm just going to say it. Before you start to teach or before you start to present or before you see a client, try to be in a quiet space for yourself first. I think everybody knows that, but because life now is so fast and so full of responsibilities and things coming at us from right and left. And if you're starting out as an astrologer and you're working at home, which we all do, we start out, even if you can't have a space where you live right now, to find a place where you can maybe go for a couple hours a week. And then you just say to clients, if you're going to see them, this is when I'm available. And don't bend on that, because if they really want to see you, they'll come in that 2 or 3 hour or 8 hour day. Yeah. And that's the thing with scheduling. I just want to say this. If you have a schedule that you keep clients, stay with the schedule. You'll always have people saying, well, I work on, I can see only on Saturday. But if you can't do this here, then here's somebody else that might be able to help you. Be willing to give a referral as a professional if you don't feel you can help the client with something they need to look at. Like if they're coming in with a medical issue and, you have to be careful because it's a medical profession. But if you don't feel that you can address it, send them to somebody who is very reputable in medical astrology. This is what we do.
It feels like the most important thing, like the more we talk, is to really be involved in the field. I think that's really the first step, to just start making connections and like meet people and start talking.
I think that's probably the key point for today is whatever field you've been in, even though you're out of the field now and you've got pretty good at it, that's probably where you start.
Yeah.
Because that's Uranian, I'm in the right place at the right time with the right people. And the other part of that, or a few different industries, because Uranian people will change every 6 to 8 years, right? Until they hit late 30s and then they decide what they're going to do. And for some weird reason, as disjointed as all of those things might have been, those are all the things that you're going to use in your practice.
That is so true. Oh my God.
That's right, because it might be you know how to groom pets and you're a musician and I don't know, you're a runner, that's so disjointed. But somehow when you decide you're going to do this is something you want to do, you're going to put together some sort of remarkable combination of dog grooming, jogging, and whatever the third thing is I said.
Oh my God. I love that.
A mobile vet service. I don't know. Anyway, a mobile vetting service, but
That also reads the birth chart of the dogs.
Yeah, that's true. Dog, that's a big deal. Dogs are a big business now.
Also, like at a very important point in the astrology industry, where now there's so many different avenues that you can take as an astrologer that as long as you're just having fun and doing what you love doing, like you're gonna find a place for yourself. Like that is not a question.
You know what? I think you just said another very important point. As long as you're working, but also having fun doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're not having fun doing it, you won't be very good at it. And my view is that this is like play. I mean, it's not, it's work, but to me is, that's why we stick with it so many years. It's like, wow, everything is always something new, right? There's always something new that we see associated with our field. This is an amazing field. It's an amazing industry. And yes, it requires a lot of work, but it's worth sticking to it and having fun. Talk to your peers, share information with peers. Never be afraid to share information with peers because they'll share with you. I mean, to, exchange with each other. So that's important too.
Nice. I think that's or closing statement. And just get out there, meet people, hang out, and explore. There's really so much opportunity in the field of astrology right now. That as long as you just tell yourself that you're going to do it, you probably will do it.
Yes. And the other part of that, what you just said, which is absolutely sure, is do not be afraid. Do not let the voice of judgment keep you from doing something you want to do, even though there will be rejections from people and hard judgments from people. If you want to do this, you have to get some strategies on how to buffer it, because I think there's a lot of people in the world who studied, who are very good, who did not become astrologers because of society's voice of judgment.
Right.
And I think it requires being a little bit brave to decide to, say, this is what I do for a living. When somebody asks you what you do at your living, instead of saying, well, I do this and do this, you just stand up, put your back up and say, I'm a professional astrologer. That's it. And then say, oh, you're an astronomer. You study the stars. No. And it takes courage to do that. Most people
does. 100%.
Say, oh, I don't want to do this, right? But then you have this terrible sick feeling inside of you going, oh, I really want to do this, but I'm so afraid. Get rid of that fear, and work on your Saturns and your horoscopes. Don't let the voice of judgment get in the way of your success. That's the other thing. Just saying.
I love that. All right, I think we're good for today then. And just to close, if you are a new student, Astrology Hub's Inner Circle is open very, very soon. And again, a big part of becoming an astrologer is meeting other astrologers and realizing that you're not alone. This is a full-fledged field and it's booming. So if you want to meet people that are on that same page as you and you want to make friends and grow together, the Inner Circle is the place for you. And we're not open right now, but we'll be open very soon. And you can join the waitlist to know when we're going to open it at astrologyhub.com/IC23. And again, it's astrologyhub.com/IC23. Georgia, have you taught already by now? No, you haven't.
No, I'm doing this. I'm doing the total solar eclipse month.
Oh, nice.
April 20th.
Yeah,
of course. And we got to sign. It's funny. We got to sign these. We didn't pick them. And it was interesting, for the audience that's watching this, is that when our discussion in the orientation yesterday, we didn't pick them, but every single one was right for us.
Right? Well, just like a bit of like behind the scenes, like the team does do a lot of thinking. Like I was actually removed from the team altogether. I was not part of the selection process because I am a teacher. So it's all mysterious. But yeah, they just do such a good job at matching people with the best month and the best topics. And the way that the mastery classes are also flowing this year is very exciting. What are you teaching this year, actually?
It's on rulerships
Mm,
and how to read a chart like three-dimensional chess. Not just
nice.
because the sun is in a certain house doesn't mean you just look at that. Where's Leo? What are the planets
Right.
that hit it? This gives you a whole three-dimensional look at the horoscope that I was not taught for the first 5 years. And one day I just noticed it in a chart. Oh my God, And so that's
Oh,
what
wow.
it was 5 years I was doing work. And then one day it hit me. And I've lost so many years, but it's a little long. It's 120 minutes, but I have enough in there for beginners. I have in there for intermediates. And I have at the end, if you want to take the challenge, a few advanced things. So it covers all the
Nice.
bases for all the level.
Nice. That's awesome. I am looking forward to all the mastery classes, really.
I think this can be a very fun year with Astrology Hub. I think this can be really fun because there's a real variety in there this year. And I like that. I think the enrollment starts March 22nd, doesn't it?
Yes, March
Yeah, you wanna
22nd,
mention that.
23rd with the Game Changing Transits event. And then it ends on April 4th.
Well, this was so fun. And it was great working with you today, Joe. I like
Thank you so much.
our back and forth a lot. I think we
Yeah, me
kinda-
too. It's the Cancer Pisces thing. It works.
Pisces, yeah, it's very good. Have a great month, everybody.
Yeah.
Cool.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you.